What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today's video is going to be one of those unfortunate videos that I'm not really a big fan making, because here in the Gotham Knights community, you guys know that for most of us that have played Gotham Knights, if you went in with an open mind, you had a likelihood whether you were going to like the game or not based on your own preference and just your own affinity to video games. However, for the most part, a lot of people have pretty much judge this game based on what they say trusted reviewers have told them. And I have one so-called trusted reviewer who made mention of specific elements within Gotham Knights that are just outrightly false and, in a sense, based on a lack of their own attention to detail. But I will throw aside a lot of those other things, but there's one that is very critical to me, and you guys know that, and that is my affinity and my passion towards combat in video games and how they must be very well done. And I argue till this day that Gotham Knights, in my opinion, has one of the better combat systems done in an adventure game and an RPG sense. But for the most part, this seems not to stick in most people's heads because they've watched a lot of these reviewers, and these reviewers have basically, in a sense, kind of lied to them. I'll play a few clips from Luke Stevens' review, and, you can share the video with him. I'm happy to defend my position here. I have nothing against Luke Stevens. If anything, no longer am I going to be watching a lot of his reviews and paying them any mind, because I think his Gotham Knights review was actually very biased in a sense. I don't know why I think so. Maybe I feel that way. Maybe it's not biased. Maybe it's just me, but I think it was. So I'm going to go ahead and show you something about, his review. So in his review here, I could play it, but I'm only going to give you the timestamps. I don't want any copyright, whatever. He makes mention of a few things here about the crafting system in the game. He talks about how the crafting system is just busy work. You probably, would think that this is something that someone who's reviewing a video game is going to pay attention to. And he said the system doesn't have any kind of intuition in the sense that whether you need to select any of the different attributes. Do I need, things like, let me play the darn thing so that you can hear for yourself, so you don't go say I'm actually saying somebody said something that they didn't say. So let me go ahead and fire it up, and then, we can all listen to it. That way you guys, you guys don't yell at me and say, hey man, why did you go say something Luke Stevens didn't say?
Around beating up these brain dead NPCs, then you will get some cutscene to trigger that either completes a side quest, contributes to the future completion of the side quest, or progresses the story. And then you go back to the base, you craft a bunch of stuff, and then repeat the cycle. The problem is the combat is not engaging enough to be considered a net positive or something that I want to actively pursue. We'll discuss combat in a little bit and the direct inspirations they took from and why it feels so terrible. We'll talk about that in a moment, but to continue on, the crafting system is also totally horrible. It's based off of a few key crafting components that you'll unlock by completing missions and collectibles and going through the main story and all of this. The problem is it feels straight out of a mobile game, and I'm not the only one that has said this. And we'll talk a little bit more at the end of the video about the conspiracy theory that's been going around about this game and its development. But it just screams like freemium mobile game. I mean, look at this menu. Look at this crafting menu. This does not look like something that is in a AAA video game that's focusing on a narrative and complex co-op gameplay system. This looks like something that's developed so that they can sell you loot boxes that give you these crafting components on the side. And I think more generally, my problem with the crafting system in this game is that it doesn't require really any effort on your part. It's just bloat. You see, after you use an item, you can then break it down for its constituent parts. Because almost every single time that you go back to the Belfry to cycle forward a night, you will have leveled up and thus need to upgrade your gear with different attachments or entirely different equipment altogether. You will constantly have a rotating collection of outdated equipment that you need to break down. And every time you do so, you unlock more crafting components, which allows you to craft the current item that actually matches your level and the difficulty of the enemies around you. And you also unlock so many crafting components just by playing the game that it doesn't offer you any challenge at all. Only once did I find myself wondering, oh, how can I not craft this? I don't have the materials. And then I look at it and realize it requires like a legendary thing that's very, very rare and that I didn't even know how to get. So I just said, screw it. And so I crafted the thing right beneath it in terms of power level that was just as good. It just was like missing one mod slot, and that's it. And this is what really bugs me, is that gameplay systems are added intentionally. These things aren't just like in games because they just appeared there. Developers choose to include these systems in their games, and creating a crafting system with all sorts of different outfits, and then having like a transmog system for applying different looks of skins onto different equipment, that takes some effort. They worked on this pretty hard, and yet it's totally mindless. You know, I bashed Assassin's Creed Valhalla for having a skill bush. It wasn't even a tree, it was a skill bush. And at the middle of the skill bush was an auto apply skill point button where you could just press A, and then the computer inside the game's engine would just randomly, or perhaps not so randomly, throw out the skill points that you unlocked so that you didn't even have to bother with it. Like, they were aware that the skill tree was so stupid and boring that they should just let the computer handle it. And this crafting system is on the same level. There's no questioning. There's no wondering, ooh, I wonder what I should equip. And I wonder what, like, poison effect, should I do that? Should I add like a concussive effect over here or an electrical effect over here? There's no consideration over that. It's just which item has the highest power level, and then you apply the mods with the highest power level after that onto that equipment, and then you're done. And if you don't have the crafting components for each of those, you break down the previous stuff you wore just the night before. It's just an exercise in busy work, and I don't find that fun. I don't think anybody finds that fun. And if your gameplay system is entirely created just to waste the player's time, I'm not interested, and I'm going to call it an absolute travesty, which this crafting system is. But you know what?
So he does that. He talks a lot. I talk a lot too. And I feel, free to basically, dog on somebody who talks a lot as well, because I know it's a hypocrisy thing on my end. But I'm just outright here showing that this gentleman did not care for this game. And the worst part is, after saying all of that word salad, and saying that this crafting system is basically a travesty because it requires no challenge, no effort, nothing. You don't have to intuitively think about what it is you're wearing on your gear. Just get the power level up and slap it. This gentleman comes over here in the 42nd minute mark and literally complains about how the difficulty of the game is basically set around scaling the enemy NPC health, which is a problem according to him in many games. I've never seen it as a problem. RPGs, it's just easier for you to just implement something like that. Other action adventure games would do things like give the enemy NPCs different abilities or whatever. But listen to what he says over here and probably try to pick it out in another bunch of word salad.
And you're like, I thought I was the superhero. And he's like, nah, son, I am. It's ridiculous. And this has been a problem with a lot of games, to be clear. Damage sponges are a problem on high difficulties in a lot of games. The way I think you fix it is quite simple. You just make it so instead of having like inordinately high health pools, instead you make them far more resistant to physical damages and the types of attacks that, say, button mashers might be dishing out. You encourage the player to try different tactics by making those enemies have large health bars, but be overtly weak to, say, poison effects or electricity effects or stun effects and things like that. That way you're forcing the player to learn how to play the game in a more complex and satisfying way, instead of just encouraging the worst elements of the combat system. Other things with regards to combat.
Did you just hear what this gentleman said? This gentleman literally makes a case and then destroys their case in the same video, because the game that you're critiquing has the exact same thing that you're requesting. The game has an intuitive combat system. It has a crafting system that actually you, if you were paying attention, would see gives your gear different abilities, capabilities, and different affinities or resistances that you can pretty much take out there to take on different enemy types. This is why I think game reviewing has now become largely a huge joke. It is all about opinions. When people tell me that there's something as a trusted reviewer, I don't believe it ever. I never have, actually, because I've been doing YouTube for a long time. I know the stress that's involved in reviewing a video game, or maybe playing a game that you thought you were interested in and you're not interested in anymore once you start playing it. Now you got to give a review because you don't gone out there and told everybody that you're going to give a review. That somebody that has all of these views, that has a huge platform, is literally not in tune with the game that they're actually giving what they think is a skeptical analysis over. it's quite sad. This is why I don't do a lot of game reviews. I mean, many of you may wonder, why don't you do game reviews? It's like, if I don't like a game, or if I play a game and I don't have the time, I don't want to sit there feeling like I have to finish this game so that I can give a review, because RPGs, I've noticed that they have a way of exposing people who don't necessarily put in the time. And this is why I always recommend that people don't buy a game until, if they're not sure, until the game is at a cost in terms of price point that they can pretty much justify as, okay, maybe I just made a $30 purchase or $40 purchase. That's not really a big deal to me. When people were going into Gotham Knights, even I, as one of the bigger channels in terms of the conversation, I made a video saying, don't buy this game if you're not into RPG games or whatever it is. His critique of the UI, that's old. I already did my video. Gotham Knights needs a lot of work. One of my more watched videos here. And I said the UI, they needed to change it. I was shocked that the developers did not even change the color scheme, or at least even go ahead and darken it darken it, or make it a little bit more translucent in a sense. That's usually kind of like the means. I wish they do UIs, or change the font size or the text size. I'm sure they wanted people to be able to see all the stats, so they have everything boom in your face, so you don't come out and start crying and whining. But it's just sad that this is something that a lot of folk, basically watch reviews like this. And I have others, by the way. He just happens to be the one who basically made the case against his own argument. So that's why I put his video out here, just so that people could actually see for themselves. Because this one, I didn't have to do any work. The other ones, I have to actually go in the game and actually show them, hey, man, these mechanics that you're critiquing, they're actually available in the game. You just have to actually do this. But I don't want to have to sit here dealing with that. And I cannot stress how sad this reality is. This is what I've been dealing with. And a lot of these people come over here and tell me I'm a shill, I'm a this. I paid for all my copies of Gotham Knights. I haven't, paid for one for a friend of mine because he was like, oh, I'm interested. I was like, hey, here you go. Play the game. Warner Bros. Didn't give me anything. I just see that this has been a trend for the longest time. And it's reducing kind of like the true criticisms, or it's reducing the validity of the true, real criticisms in video games when people come out and say things like this when they don't engage with and engage in the mechanics. I recommend that reviewers just be honest with themselves always and say, this game doesn't look like something I want to play. Maybe I should just stream it and then I can talk about it and then go from there. And that's all I'm going to do. Or maybe I'm not going to touch the game. Rather than sit there and act like there's some authority over video games, and then they go ahead and say things like this. And by the way, folks, I'm telling you, this is one of the things that was said because, again, this is a core mechanic of the game. This is an RPG game. And when he said it, I said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe nobody pointed this out. In fact, if we go through the comments of the reviews, you're going to see that barely anybody kind of, pushed back against the stuff that he said. He literally just said that, and nobody pushed back because a lot of people who watch the reviews, they haven't played the games. They haven't necessarily engaged with, a lot of the content. I mean, if you look through, you're not going to see anybody pushing back and saying anything differently. We can do it as an exercise. I mean, why not? It's one of those things where if I want to critique, I want to make sure that we are as detailed as we possibly can be. So let's look. A lot of the reviews, it's sad because the game has so much potential. The game 100% feels like it was meant to be like a loot box filled live service game. He mentions again another thing in the beginning of this game, that the game was live service. I didn't put that point out there because that's, kind of one of those weird things, but all these other people are over here saying, oh yeah, thanks for putting out these videos. Oh, one thing I love to see, this. I'm only on my second playthrough. I'm playing through the whole game. One character, them see the cutscenes, the outfits I make are one of my favorite parts of the game. So some people are saying they like the game, but a lot of folk don't necessarily seem to be getting, what's going on. He compared the game to some other games, but this particular thing, he said something about the game being more like, I can't remember what game he compared it with, which it's not. It's more like The Division, but I'm already tired. I gotta go, guys. Peace out.